The way I like to think about it is where your sales funnel ends, your retention funnel begins. So at the point in time when the conversion occurs and you got the sale and you collected the cash, that sales funnel, the marketing funnel, essentially has done its job. It has gone through to completion. Now you're in a retention funnel. Now there's a whole depth to this that I think a lot of expert businesses don't consider, and it's a shame, because a lot of expert businesses that otherwise could have thrived or could have scaled, especially if you're doing payment plans or recurring billing of any kind, they could have been thriving, and they could have been far more profitable. They could have spent a lot, maybe less on ads, or they could have scaled significantly further if they understood this concept that just someone buying from you is not the end of the road. It's actually the beginning of the road in keeping that customer over time. And there's a lot of categories that we can kind of break down how this goes. But imagine this. This is how I like to compare it. Look at whatever your cost per acquisition is. So say you have a $100 per month subscription, and it's maybe you have a $200 cost per acquisition. Would you rather spend $200 to get a $100 customer per month, or would you rather spend $20 to keep a customer that's already paid you to stay retained in your infrastructure? That's the difference here. You're talking about a in some cases 5 times higher cost of acquiring a brand new customer than retaining ones. The nature of marketers being really good marketers is that they think, I can always go and acquire more customers. But another way to think about it is, what if I could cut your traffic cost down to 10%, which is essentially what it is. When you're able to retain a significantly higher amount of customers and to fight against churn and keep people paying you month over month, the exponential growth of that, what we call incremental revenue, which is the value of a customer being recovered or retained over time. If you see that compounding effect, like, you can actually spend a lot less on ads. You can worry a lot less about marketing. You can be even worse at sales potentially, because you aren't maintaining people long-term. So I think one of the most critical aspects of any business, especially expert businesses, if you're looking to scale, is to focus as much, literally 50-50, on sales and marketing and retention at the same time. Those two are halves of an entire whole. And I think far too many expert businesses and coaches and people who have an amazing service kind of drop the ball as far as keeping their customers long-term, even for life, and focus 90% of their time on marketing versus retention. So I'd say if you give it that equal balance between the two, it can seriously change your business for the better.
So let's say I'm a founder you just described, and I'm not currently spending 50% of my efforts on retention, my retention funnel, as you put it. What do I do?
So what do we do? Well, the first thing is, as they say in the actual recovery space, the first thing to do is to identify and admit that you have a problem. Let's say looking into the numbers.
That's a different recovery space, isn't it?
That's a different kind of recovery. But to borrow the colloquialism, you have to admit that there's a problem. And so there's a couple different buckets that we like to think about. First is kind of the pre-churn retention. This is the customer experience as far as what happens before either a voluntary or involuntary churn event occurs. So it's kind of the pre-churn retention. Then once we get into this new category here that most people aren't paying attention to, and generally they're taking Stripe and turning on auto retries if it's on a subscription, hoping that works. And you're going to find that at least where we're comparing, you're going to see between a 10 and maybe 40% at best recovery just using the Stripe rebills and their recovery features, versus for us, we're seeing between 70 to 98%, depending on the price point, the products, customers, all those types of things. It's because taking a better approach than just slamming through rebills is going to make a big difference. So there's the pre-churn retention play. Then there's failed billings. These are generally transactional, where someone's card fails, or there's insufficient funds, or there's a bank block, or their cards got robbed, or whatever it was. These are involuntary pieces of churn. Now, these are when they didn't intend to leave, but something accidentally happened. Now, you could hire a staff member to go back and consistently call those people and try to get them back on track. That's one method to go about doing it. But then you're also fighting against really this third category of churn, which is strong voluntary churn. Now, this is when people are saying, stop charging me. I don't want to give you any more money. I don't want this product anymore. And so what I found, almost like in many, friendships I've had over time, if someone says, or like when you're a kid and you have a good friend and they say, I don't want to be your friend anymore. That's very subjective. And you're very likely going to be friends ongoing. You just have to solve a problem. So really hard voluntary churn is essentially people saying, I'm unsatisfied. So if we're able to go out and address the level of, or the issue around satisfaction or support or product quality or whatever, if we can help them get what it is that they wanted when they signed up in the first place, that's how we can fight churn as well. So I'm saying this is a completely solvable problem for virtually 100% of businesses on any kind of recurring billing. If your product is just awful, right, you got to fix the product. But assuming that you have a generally good product that drives generally good outcomes, you should be experiencing less than half of the churn on average that I see, way less than half of the churn that you're experiencing when you can start to see this retention funnel coming into place.
What are some of the most common reasons you see people drop off in expert businesses specifically? So like when your team's in the trenches, recovering payments, reselling people, which again is something that you guys do that I think is just incredible. Like you guys almost are like a reselling team at some point for the product. What are some of the most common reasons you're seeing that customers stop paying or they stop engaging? I think that would be really valuable for you guys have all that data from a product standpoint for people to be able to reverse engineer and go, okay, how do I actually create a better customer experience? Take us into that. What are you seeing?
Yeah. So boy, again, there's just for context as to why it would be a very long conversation to go super in depth, is that there's over 2,000 different reasons, subjective and objective, including voluntary and involuntary churn that are possible reasons why someone stops paying you, why churn occurs. There's over 2,000 different reasons that we've deduced in our listing.
Wow.
And so we tried to factor in as many of those possibilities as we can in order to, if we can address that churn reason why they're churning out voluntary or involuntary, then we know how to address it. And then that's why we're so significantly more effective, we find, than other solutions, is because we're taking the reason and the reason for the churn, and we can address that directly. But I would say generally, as far as like advice is concerned, the first thing to consider to fight against churn is to prevent it in the first place, right? It's kind of like, what's that old saying from, I think it was The Office or something, like, what's the best way to not die when you're skiing? Well, you don't ski. Well, you certainly should have a subscription-based portion of your business, but to prevent that churn is the number one step to fighting the entire churn battle overall. So the biggest things I recommend there, just as far as a couple tips, make sure that you're building feedback loops into every step of their customer success journey. Like, what is the outcome that you're proposing that you give? If they're coming in expecting a particular result, the sooner that they can get that, the better. So give them some feedback loops for each step in the journey. It doesn't matter if this is a service or if this is a software. There's a 1,000 different ways to build these feedback loops into the system. But essentially, when they do a thing, they complete an activity, or they perform a behavior that you want them to be adopting, reward that by closing off the loop and saying, hey, great job, you did it. Let's get you into the next one, right? So whether it's a dopamine hit or you're sending them gifts or prizes, I mean, why do you think all these awards for whether it's funnel revenue or the YouTube awards or like any of these platforms that award people, they're closing feedback loops saying, hey, you did this thing. We want you to go do more of that thing. Let's close the loop and reward you for that and confirm that was the right thing that we want to do. So feedback loops are critical. The second big part of the pre-churn retention is to build in tracking, very specific tracking and customer success reports. Knowing where each one of your students or your customers are in that journey is going to help inform you any bottlenecks you're going to face, any product related issues that are stuck. I remember, Richard, one time I had this big course and there were, I think, several thousands of people through it, but there was one step. It was like step 8 out of 12 that was a 404 page because a redirect wasn't working. And so all these people were being stuck there, and almost none of them would like report it to you. They're not going to like call you and say, hey, this step, it's like less than 1% of people are actually going to do that. So there are people falling off, and we didn't even know about it because we weren't tracking exactly where people were at. And you're going to see a huge fall off, and you can go look at the page, whether it's active or not. So the pre-churn retention is a huge piece. And so addressing client experience, tracking the results, and closing feedback loops, that's the absolute biggest portion. But again, on this other side, as far as common reasons why people are not paying either your payment plans or even subscriptions. Generally, we see one of the top primary reasons is insufficient funds. So there's not enough funds on that card, or they've gone over their credit limit. Now, these are easily addressable, but they are subjective reasons. And so you can't just auto rebill them and continue to hit their card, because it's actually going to put your merchant processing account at risk by doing that. Instead, you want to get in touch with the customer directly, which is what we found is our secret sauce, is how we go about addressing customers directly to get them back on track, so that we can, if we don't know the reason, whether it's voluntary, involuntary, if it's a objective or subjective reason why they're churning, we're able to interface with them directly to get them back on track, and then kind of heal up that subscription itself to ensure that it doesn't fail ongoing, so that the card is healthy, problems are solved. If they had product issues, you can get some of that feedback as well. But really, it goes back to whoever coined it. I think I would attribute it probably to most recently hearing it from a Jeff Bezos quote or something. But the concept of love your customer and obsess over your customer couldn't possibly be more valuable, especially when you're getting feedback from people as far as like what the issues are, what are the problems they're experiencing with their card. Maybe we've had people with a death in the family, or they've had a divorce, or their bank account got hacked. Any of these reasons are going to be, it's all money left on the table that if you're able to address it appropriately, you can win people back for almost any reason.